The Gympie Duck Pond is in the town of Gympie, which is in Queensland, Australia. And it's situated beside the main highway that runs all of the way around the coastline of Australia. I first became aware of this duck pond when I was driving home one year from Cairns to Brisbane, and I was in need of a coffee, so I stopped off at Macca's, but there was nowhere to drink my coffee there because the car park was packed. Inside the store was packed as well. There was just so many people. This is in the middle of the hot summer. There were people sitting on the bitumen in the car park eating the food they'd just bought. So I very carefully drove out of the drive-through and continued driving south, thinking I'll have to stop off at a rest area somewhere to drink my coffee. And then I spotted this duck pond. It's a huge recreational area with trees and lakes and picnic tables and seats and car parking areas and restrooms and a museum and sporting facilities. There are islands and fountains in the middle of the lakes, but the thing that impressed me the most was the number of birds. Gympie used to be a gold mining town, and the local historical society has a museum, and apparently the museum was the group that started this development of this area, and after a while it got too much for them to handle, so the local council took it on, and then one of the local clubs, the Lions Club, has got involved as well, and they've done some work with it. And I'd never heard of it, didn't know it was there, but when I pulled in I just couldn't get over the birds. There were just so many of them. They're all wild birds. All of the birds are free to come and go as they please. There's no cages of any sort that I saw. The trees you can see now are in the middle of the lake on little islands. And that's Australian White Ibis, a pair of them there. And there's lots of ibis nesting on the islands. And as well, there are two different types of egrets there. The intermediate egret and cattle egrets. And as well as that, there's cormorants. I mean, there's two different types of cormorant up there. I have seen the little pied cormorants, and the little black cormorants are also nesting in that tree. And there could be other types of birds nesting as well. And there are lots of different birds swimming in the lake as well. The large black ones are black swans. And the smaller birds that you see, there are a few of them. There are the dusky moorhens, swamp hens, and Eurasian coots. There are not a lot of coots on this pond, but they are there. There's at least, a small handful of them there. And apart from those birds, there are a few different varieties of ducks, and there's some geese around as well. Most of the birds that walk around on the grass seem to be quite comfortable around people. I get the feeling they're accustomed to being fed regularly by lots of different people. They will actually run at you rather than away from you. And the swans, well, they just see you coming and they just all head in your direction. Now, these photos were taken in November 2021, and in February 2022 there was a monster flood and all of this area was underwater. It was under about 20 metres of water, more than 20 metres of water. I was a bit concerned that the birds may not still be there, but they are. I went back again. There was another flood in March 2022. The trees even have, up to the top of the trees, have been inundated twice in 2022. And I'm actually doing this voiceover now in June 2022. And I have recently been back there, and the grass is got a fine coating of very fine silt. And some of the trees look really grubby. There's mud still in them up quite high. So although I never saw any photos of the duck pond during the flood, I did see lots on TV of houses that were underwater up to, their roofs. The water was over the tops of the roofs. I'm about to walk across the bridge. You can see where the sign says you are here. And then I'm going to turn right and walk along a little way towards that lake on the right-hand side. That road you can see at the top right-hand corner, that's the main highway that goes north-south. And once I've walked along there a little bit, I'll come back and walk around the big pond in the middle. And there's more lakes there as well than what you can see on the sign. It's almost a 3-hour drive to my place from this duck pond, and all of the way along on this day I was hoping I would see a spoonbill, because they do appear sometimes at these waterholes, but you got to be there when they are there because they don't stick around. And I think we might have one coming up shortly. I did see one, and I think it was the royal spoonbill, and I was trying to get a good photo of its beak. That cattle egret in the bottom right of the screen has found itself a nice stick for its nest. There's a whole lot of ibis nesting there, and the tree that they're in is a she oak with those long needle-like leaves. And that is a cattle egret with the yellow-orange head feathers. That's their breeding plumage. On the little bridge there. And there's another cattle egret. They're usually all white except when they're breeding, and then they have that orangish colour on their heads and parts of their bodies. A black swan and a tortoise. Another cattle egret. They look out over the area for a while and they fly off and come back later on with a big stick which they're using for their nesting. And there you can see the bridge and the cattle egrets in the she oak trees. You might occasionally catch a glimpse of a pure white egret in the trees nesting. They are the intermediate egrets. There's a lot of them there. They just seem to be better at hiding. There's bottle tree. They get their names from the shape of their trunk. Now I think these must be swamp hen chicks. The only thing that confuses me is they don't have the purple chests, but not all swamp hens do have that purple chest. They seem to be mainly ibis, but there's a lot of egrets in there as well. That's the Australian White Ibis. Some people call them bin chickens because their habitat been mostly destroyed now, and in the cities they get into the garbage. That's how they survive. They usually prefer crustaceans, anything that they can find in the water. But when their habitat's gone, they've left without much choice of what to eat. I'm walking along a path now, and there's some geese. There's 2 different types of geese there. And here's some female Australian wood ducks. I did a video recently of the lake at Forest Lake where I had a beautiful photo of a male wood duck. And there's the females. They're waiting for him at a different lake. And there's a black swan with a cygnet. There's lots of swans, and there's quite a few of them have got babies. There'll be more swans with their babies coming up. A cattle egret and some ibis. Another picture of the swan with its baby. Some more geese. They're pretty tame, these geese. They didn't try to attack me. I'm walking along almost to the end of this pond. This is another bridge off in the distance. I'm going to walk over that bridge too. It could be some corellas. Geese again. There's also a children's playground just near this area where I'm standing at the moment. That's a flowering tree. I don't know what its name is. There's a few different types of ducks there. I'm not sure what they're all called. I did some researching, but I couldn't find all of them. That's a Pacific black duck walking towards us at the moment. All of that noisy commotion with the birds, they're corellas, there's lots of them, and they're flying around, screeching as they go from tree to tree. There's 3 small flocks, and they keep joining together and then separating and joining together and separating. They're having a wonderful time. They're just being corellas. Yes, there's the corellas. They're so noisy, and there's 3 flocks of them. 3 different waves came over, and they all joined together into one big flock, and then they all flew off, and of course they're just screeching the whole time. They're a type of cockatoo, and they're Australian native birds. Then I managed to get a bit of video of another one. They keep this up all the time. There's 3 flocks of them. They just come in waves like that. You just see there's 2 waves I've managed to video, then there would be a 3rd lot coming from the left. That's a Pacific black duck. Up a bit close, you can get a good look. You can't always see that bright green patch. This ibis, I had to walk over that bridge and it waited there for me until I got almost up close enough to touch it, and then it flew off. And those flowers were growing just near the bridge, just next to where the ibis was. There's some more of the geese. Flower, Australian native. Some more ibis. There's the spoonbill. Now, I wasn't going to try to get too close to it, and this is as best I could do. I was really hoping to get a nice photo of the front of its beak because it's all rippled. It's a bill, actually, I think, not a beak. It's got that spoon on the end of it. I'll stick with it for a while in my efforts to try to get. There it is walking along. It's walking quite quickly. That's a swamp hen. Yes, a swamp hen and an ibis. And there's the spoonbill. Looks like I managed to wander a little bit closer to it, but I wasn't going to get too close. See, it's got its breeding plumage as well. That's those long feathers coming out the back of its head, and it can lift them up and down, or this one was doing that. The females have got the same, but they don't have, it's not quite as long as the males. There were some of these at my local lake, at Forest Lake, but I missed out on getting a photo of them this year. Somebody else did, and they were really good photos. That's why I really wanted to get a photo of a spoonbill in its breeding plumage. And I got one, but it wasn't a very satisfactory photo. I couldn't get close enough. Didn't want it to fly away, I didn't want to frighten it. You can see its spoonbill there. If you're further off in the distance, just behind where the bird is standing, is another road that's quite busy. It's one of the roads in town. It's not the main highway. The main highway is quite tiny going through town. When you're approaching, it's got 2 lanes in each direction, or 3 lanes in each direction in places. So it's, a major 110km/h road. Then you get into Gympie and it's really narrow. But it's not too bad with it being narrow at Gympie, because up until the turn off to Noosa, it's pretty heavy traffic. But once you get past the turn off to Noosa, well then it's much lighter traffic. But the Noosa's not very far south of Gympie. It's one of the more expensive tourist resorts. There's the bird flying away. Yes, Noosa is a beach tourist resort. This is the end of the spoonbill. It had enough. I don't think I frightened it up, but maybe it just got sick of walking away from me. That's a peewee. Willy wagtail. You'll see the willy wagtail's tail in action. They bop around with their tails. It's very hard to get a photo. This one wasn't really tame. It didn't let me get very close. They eat insects. And there's the peewee again. They're also called mudlarks, but they're not related to larks. And they're not related to magpies either, even though they're called magpie larks as well. I have lots of names. This one's trying to approach me. I'm sitting on a seat but now, this ibis, and somebody has thrown half a mandarin on the ground. And I didn't touch it. It wasn't me. I didn't put it there. But the ibis decided it was something good to eat. I thought I'd get a few photos of it. It came up quite close to me to get that. It was looking at me and it'd walk forward a bit, then it'd stop and look at me. Eventually, it really wanted that mandarin though. Better for it than bread, I hope. There you go. There's the peewee again. And here's some more ibis. I'm heading back now. I'm about to go home. I like that picture. And the ibis. There's a lot of these fountains in the various ponds. I guess they're keeping the water fresh, keeping oxygen in the water. Now that is not dead, it's very sick though, it's an ibis. There's another one lying on the grass a bit further on that was very smelly. It was dead. Now these are the swamp hens, and they're mean buggers. They decided that they didn't like this ibis lying on the ground, so they started attacking it. The other ibis had been carefully walking around it and looking at it with a worried look. I hope it recovered and flew off, but I didn't have much hope for it, and I didn't know what to do for it. There's some more swans with a couple of cygnets. They're a bit bigger than the one we saw swimming earlier, and that is an ibis. So the bank curves down to the water. You can just see the ibis's head, and it's popping up and down all the time. I'm back at the same side of the lake where I first started the video, but along a bit. I've got to walk along a bit yet to get to where I was when I started. There was another pool that I didn't walk around. There didn't seem to be many birds in it. That swan with its leg up, it had its leg up for a long time. I don't know if it was a problem with its leg or it was just stretching. That's a close-up of those two cygnets. That is not all of the swans in the lake. There's a lot of them around. They're mainly in this part of the lake or in the other one that's closer to the main highway. That bird on the left that's flying is an intermediate egret, and all the others on the right are ibis, of course. And there's the swans again. I was taking photos of this swan because that bit of grass hanging out of its beak. Another look at the ibis and their nests, and a lot of the birds there are egrets. Black swan and a couple of ibis. Yes, when I walked on the other side of the pond and walked towards the road, there's the cormorants. They're little bud cormorants. That's a cattle egret. The egrets were flying off and gathering big sticks. Now watch this intermediate egret. It's on the right at the front. Looks all ratty and tattered. I think it might have just come out of a nest. It's got its breeding plumage and it's all ruffled up. It looks to me like it's hungry and it's come down and it's getting down closer and closer to the water and it wants to catch something, and it did catch something. It's just, I got lots of photos of it, and when it caught something it got back up a little bit and then it flew off, probably back to a nest. See, there it is. It's going to get closer to the water and catch something. Once it's got its catch, it turns around and flies off, looking much tidier now than it did in the beginning. See, that's a cormorant. There's on the other side there. I walked all along there, and there were swans there with a few cygnets. But when I walked along to where they were, they'd gone across the other side of the lake. So it was time for me to go home, as it would the Pacific black duck. You see over there, that tree, there was swans with bigger cygnets, but they were not there when I got there. I was driving out to go home and I saw this lot. I finally got near to where I was, so I stopped the car and jumped out and got this photo, and then I headed for home. And that's the end of the video. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a like. If you'd like to see more of these videos, then subscribe if you haven't already done so. Bye bye for now, and thank you for watching.